Welcome back to Occult Archives,
The show that delves into the forbidden texts,
the books that history has tried to bury,
but we bring them back into the light
to uncover the mysteries.
and the legends behind those pages.
I am your host,
And I am the expert.
and today we're taking a deep dive into the Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception,
Which promises a blueprint to the universe itself.
all interwoven with esoteric Christianity.
So strap yourselves in, because this one's going to be a wild ride.
From what I've gathered so far, this book is dense.
Oh, it absolutely is.
It claims to explain everything from our own inner workings to the vast cosmic plan,
You know, like how we develop as individuals?
to how the entire universe operates.
It's a really ambitious undertaking.
It is. Now, right off the bat, the book lays down some ground rules for approaching knowledge like this. It stresses the importance of having an open mind,
Right.
almost to the point of believing anything is possible.
Yeah, it uses this phrase, believeth all things is possible.
But, and I think this is important, it's not asking us to just blindly accept everything we read.
No, not at all.
It's more about a conscious decision to suspend our judgment.
To temporarily set aside those preconceived notions.
Even the things we think are hard facts,
Exactly.
just to allow for the possibility of something new coming in.
Like, okay, let's entertain this idea.
Yeah.
Even if it seems out there, let's see where it leads.
Right. And the book even suggests that to do this, we need a certain fluidity of mind.
A fluidal state of adaptability, it says.
Right?
And they compare it to the mind of a child.
Oh, interesting.
Think about how children learn.
Right.
They're constantly questioning, they're observing.
Absorbing information without all the filters that we develop as adults.
Without those limitations.
Right, without the been there, done that attitude.
Exactly.
So it's almost like we need to recapture that childlike sense of wonder.
Absolutely. That open-mindedness.
That willingness to be surprised.
Yeah, that thirst for light, more light, as the book puts it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's the driving force.
That's the curiosity that propels us forward.
Yeah.
Now, for a book that makes such bold claims, it also includes a rather interesting disclaimer.
It does.
What's the gist of that?
It essentially says, hey, reader, take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Don't just blindly accept everything here as gospel truth.
So, in a way, it's actually quite humble.
I think so, yeah.
It's acknowledging that this is just one perspective.
Right. One interpretation.
And that ultimate truth might be something we each have to discover for ourselves.
I say so.
Now, with that disclaimer in mind, where does this cosmic journey actually begin?
Well, the book jumps right into discussing the role of Western civilization
Okay.
and a very specific form of esoteric Christianity within this grand cosmic framework.
So what's the Rosicrucian take on that?
It claims that true esoteric Christianity, and it's important to note that they distinguish this from both Judaism and what they call popular Christianity.
So there's a distinction being made right from the start.
Absolutely. They see esoteric Christianity as the spiritual path
Okay.
that's destined to become the dominant world religion, at least for the Western world.
That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
And what about figures like Buddha, for example?
Oh, they acknowledge Buddha.
Okay.
They even refer to him as the light of Asia.
But they still place Christ above him.
Yes, they do. They call Christ the light of the world.
So clearly, Christ plays a central role in this esoteric Christian perspective.
Absolutely central.
Now, I can imagine some people might be a little skeptical about such a strong claim,
Oh, for sure.
especially if they're not familiar with this specific viewpoint.
And the book seems to anticipate that kind of skepticism.
It does.
It even includes this observation about the supreme confidence of deepest ignorance.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Basically saying that those who know the least are often the quickest to dismiss something new.
It's like the less you know, the more certain you are that you're right.
Right, exactly.
Now, the book also emphasizes that acquiring this kind of esoteric knowledge isn't passive.
No, not at all.
It requires a tremendous amount of effort.
Persistent effort.
Right.
There's no shortcut to this kind of understanding.
And it stresses that it's not about having some kind of special gift.
Right, they reject that notion outright.
It's about hard work.
It's about inner development.
So this isn't something that just comes naturally to a select few.
Not in their view.
It's attainable by anyone with the will to pursue it.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the motivation behind seeking this knowledge?
Yeah.
Is it just about satisfying intellectual curiosity?
It's more than that, much more. The book makes it very clear that the primary motivation for pursuing occult knowledge should be an ardent desire to benefit humanity.
Okay, so there's an ethical component here.
A huge one. It explicitly warns against seeking this knowledge for personal gain or selfish purposes.
Because knowledge without a moral compass can be dangerous.
Exactly.
It can be misused.
Exactly.
So it's almost like there's a responsibility that comes with this kind of knowledge.
Absolutely. They see it as a sacred trust, you know?
Yeah, let's talk about clairvoyance. The book seems to acknowledge that developing this inner perception doesn't necessarily lead to instant enlightenment.
It's not like suddenly all the secrets of the universe are just laid bare before you.
Right. They use a very interesting analogy to explain this. They compare it to someone who's been blind from birth suddenly gaining their sight.
That's a good one.
That person wouldn't immediately understand everything they're seeing.
No, it takes time
They would need to learn,
to interpret.
to develop perspective and understanding.
Exactly.
And it also points out that even those of us who have had sight our entire lives, we still don't fully comprehend everything we see.
Yeah, our understanding of the physical world is always evolving.
It takes years of study and experience to grasp even a small fraction of its complexities.
And, they apply that same principle to the superphysical world.
So, acquiring knowledge on those more subtle levels of existence.
It also requires patience,
Careful observation.
diligent study.
And it's susceptible to misinterpretation.
Absolutely.
And to further emphasize this point about the subjective nature of perception,
Even among those who are trained to observe.
they use this really great analogy about newspaper reporters.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that if you send 20 reporters to cover the same event,
You'll get 20 different accounts in the next day's paper.
each with its own emphasis,
It's their own interpretation.
its own spin on the same reality,
It just shows how our individual perspectives can shape what we see.
and what we choose to focus on.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork for how to approach this knowledge.
Right.
Now let's get into the meat of it. The book talks about the relationship between the physical world and the superphysical worlds.
Okay, this is key.
It says that to understand the physical world, which is the world of effects,
We have to delve into the superphysical world,
which is the world of causes.
the unseen forces that shape our reality.
So it's like we see a train moving or we hear a radio playing, but the actual forces behind those things, like electricity,
The manipulation of radio waves.
right? Those things remain invisible to our normal senses.
Exactly.
And the book gives some really great examples of these unseen forces.
Yeah, like the formation of ice crystals,
Okay.
or those beautiful frost flowers that form on a window pane.
Those are seen as tangible manifestations of subtle energies emanating from those higher worlds.
They're happening all around us,
All the time.
even if we don't see them.
Right?
It's a constant interplay between the seen and the unseen.
It's almost like there's this hidden world operating in parallel to our own.
And it's the source of everything that manifests in the physical world.
Now, that leads us to a fascinating discussion about thought forms,
Oh yes, thought forms.
which play a huge role in how this reality is actually created.
And the book uses a brilliant analogy to explain this.
Okay, hit me with it.
The architect and the house.
Oh, I've heard of this one. Okay, tell me more.
So, imagine an architect designing a house.
Okay.
They first have the idea, the concept in their mind.
The complete vision.
Yes. Then they create a blueprint on paper.
An objective representation of the initial thought form.
Exactly. Then the construction workers use that blueprint to build the actual physical house.
So it's like the thought precedes the manifestation.
Always.
It's the blueprint that guides the creation.
And here's the thing. The house can be destroyed.
Right.
It can fall apart.
But the thought form, the blueprint remains.
As long as the architect lives.
And potentially even beyond that.
Right, because it's imprinted on the memory of nature.
So you're telling me that everything in this material world, in essence, started as a thought.
That's the idea.
That's mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
It kind of makes you wonder who or what is doing all the thinking.
Right. And speaking of thinking, the book also presents this really interesting idea that the physical world itself is a kind of model school.
Okay.
It's designed to teach us how to work in the superphysical worlds.
So it's like a training ground.
Exactly.
We learn about cause and effects, limitations, consequences, all within this tangible realm.
So that we don't make those same mistakes when we operate in the more fluid and subtle realms.
It's like we're getting prepped for something bigger.
Right. They even use this analogy of an inventor developing a new machine.
Okay, I like where this is going. Tell me more about that.
So the inventor might have a fully formed idea in their mind.
The perfect concept.
Right. But when they actually start building it,
Putting it into practice.
they might encounter unforeseen challenges,
Mhm.
needing modifications, adjustments.
The physical world provides that testing ground.
Exactly. It forces us to refine our ideas.
And learn through direct experience.
Once.
Okay, so we've established this connection between the physical and the superphysical. Now let's talk about the specifics of these worlds beyond the physical.
Let's do it.
The book starts with the etheric region.
And the vital body.
It's the vital counterpart not just to human beings, but to planets as well.
Everything that's alive has an etheric body.
And it extends just slightly beyond the physical body.
About 1.5 inches, they say.
And it's described as luminous with a peach blossom color.
Very vibrant.
Okay. Now, they introduce this idea of polarity within these vital bodies.
Right.
In a man, the vital body is considered female or negative.
And in a woman, it's male or positive.
This concept of polarity plays a big role in their explanation of physiological processes.
And they even use it to explain why women might be more emotionally expressive.
Okay.
They attribute it to an excess of blood generated by their positive vital body.
Interesting. Now, how about the texture of the vital body itself?
They describe it as being made up of these interlocking points.
Points, okay. And what do those points do?
They infuse the dense physical atoms with vital life force.
So they're like tiny energy conduits.
Exactly. And they use this pointing analogy to explain things like the temporary separation of the vital body during near-death experiences, particularly drowning.
That makes sense. I've heard people talk about those tingling sensations when they're being resuscitated.
Right. That's the vital body re-entering the physical body.
Okay, so we've covered the etheric region. Next up is the desire world. What can you tell me about that?
This is where things start to get really interesting. The desire world is the realm of our desires, wishes, passions, feelings.
Okay, so it's the emotional realm.
Exactly.
And like the physical world, it's said to have 7 subdivisions.
7 regions.
But a key difference is that there's not a clear distinction between force and matter in the desire world.
Right. It's more of a fluid intermingling of the two.
They even refer to its substance as force matter.
And navigating the desire world can be tricky, especially for those who are new to clairvoyance.
Because things aren't as fixed and stable as they are in the physical world?
Right. They talk about parallax, where you misjudge distances.
Okay.
Things being out of focus.
It's like trying to grab smoke.
Yeah, it's very fluid. And they use these really great analogies to explain this, like a baby reaching for the moon.
Completely unable to gauge the actual distance.
Or a newly sighted person relying more on touch than sight.
So it's almost like you have to relearn how to perceive reality.
You have to become, as a little child again, they say?
Open and receptive to new ways of seeing.
Absolutely.
Now, the book describes some of the specific characteristics of these different regions within the desire world.
Right, like the second region,
Okay.
which is more neutral and
No.
where our sense impressions are transformed into picture-like thought forms.
So that's where our perceptions start to take shape.
And then there's the third region,
Okay.
which is dominated by self-centered desires.
It's called the region of wishes.
And the book makes this really profound statement about the desire world's connection to the physical world.
What's that?
It says that the desire world actually permeates the physical world.
Just like lines of force within water.
Invisible, but everywhere present.
And it's the driving force behind everything we see and experience.
Our emotions, our desires, they have a much bigger impact than we realize.
Okay, so we've explored the etheric region and the desire world. Now let's move up to the world of thought.
This is where the mind comes into play.
And it's divided into 2 main sections.
Right.
The region of concrete thought
The 4 denser regions.
and the region of abstract thought.
The 3 finer, more rarefied regions.
And this world of thought is seen as the meeting point between spirit and body.
Central hub.
And it's the highest of the 3 worlds involved in our current stage of evolution.
The physical, the desire, and the thought world.
To help visualize these complex relationships, the book uses a really helpful analogy.
Ah, yes, the nested container.
I love a good analogy. Lay it on me.
So imagine a sponge saturated with water,
Okay.
placed inside a container of sand.
Okay, got it.
And all of that is surrounded by air.
I'm following you.
The sand represents the physical world.
Okay.
The water is the desire world.
Permeating both the sand and the sponge.
And the air is the world of thought.
Existing within and extending beyond the other 2 elements.
Exactly.
That's a great visual.
It shows how these worlds are interconnected.
And they're not completely separate from each other.
They interpenetrate,
Right.
and each one is more subtle than the last.
Now, they take this analogy even further.
They do.
They extend it to describe the relationships between planets,
So each planet is like a sponge,
composed of the three worlds.
and the world of life spirit is like the water that connects them all.
So there's this underlying unity.
A cosmic web of energy.
It binds everything together.
And, to travel between planets in consciousness, you would need a vehicle attuned to that world of life spirit.
That makes sense.
It's all about vibrational compatibility.
Now, the book also touches on the difference between animal and human consciousness.
Right.
Animals are said to have a group soul-driven picture consciousness.
Like a dream state, but rationally guided by the group spirit.
Okay.
Whereas humans have a more individual waking consciousness.
We perceive ourselves as separate,
Self-aware.
with free will.
And they even connect the physical structure to consciousness.
How so?
They say that the horizontal spine in animals reflects the influence of the earth-encircling currents of the group spirits,
Interesting.
while humans with our upright walk, upright larynx, and warm blood.
These are the prerequisites for an individual ego vehicle.
The physical form supporting the individualized spirit.
So it's not just random evolutionary quirks.
Right, it's all connected to the development of consciousness.
Now let's talk about the mind. The book describes its role through another fascinating analogy.
Okay, what's this one?
They liken the mind to the projecting lens of a stereopticon. It takes formless thought forms from the world of thought
Okay.
and focuses them onto the desire body.
So it acts as a bridge between thought and feeling.
Right. This interaction then stirs our emotions.
And can lead to physical action.
And the whole process leaves a memory trace in the vital body.
It's a fascinating interplay.
It really is. Now, what about involuntary memory?
The subconscious mind.
How does that fit into all of this?
Well, they describe it as a more passive process,
Okay.
where the etheric vibrations in the air we breathe carry impressions of our surroundings and our inner states.
Okay.
And these impressions are injected into our bloodstream,
Wow.
and they get imprinted on the vital body.
So it's like we're constantly recording our experiences on a subconscious level.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And these subconscious recordings have a big influence on our postmortem experiences.
Now, speaking of postmortem experiences, let's talk about what happens at the moment of death.
The big transition.
The book says that the higher vehicles, the vital body, the desire body, and the mind.
They withdraw from the physical body in a spiral motion.
And they take something with them.
The soul atom of the dense body.
Okay, what's a soul atom?
It's not a physical atom, but an energetic imprint
Carrying all the life forces and experiences.
from that lifetime.
And the soul atom becomes the nucleus for future physical bodies.
It's the seed of our next incarnation.
So it's like a continuity of experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book even mentions the scientific debate about weight loss at death.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this.
Dr. McDougall's experiment.
Right.
Suggesting a measurable weight loss in humans, but not in animals.
Okay.
And they contrast that with Professor Twining's findings.
Which showed a slight weight loss in animals as well,
Right?
but it was so minute.
Yes, very tiny.
The book kind of presents these findings as tentative support for the idea of a soul departing.
Right. Something non-physical leaving the body at the moment of death.
Okay, so the higher vehicles depart. What happens to the vital body?
It's also discarded.
But its life forces aren't lost.
No, they form a nucleus for future vital bodies.
And then the individual finds themselves in the desire world.
And their experience there is shaped by their earthly desires and attachments.
So someone who is deeply attached to material possessions.
They might experience a kind of lingering in the denser regions of the desire world,
Still craving those things.
but unable to satisfy those cravings.
Whereas someone who is old and weary of life, they might pass through more quickly.
Yes, much more quickly.
Now, the desire world is also described as having a purgative function.
This is where we work through those negative desires and attachments.
And it's not about divine punishment.
No, it's more about experiencing the consequences of those desires directly.
The classic example is the miser.
Still obsessed with gold.
But in the desire world, he can't touch it, can't possess it.
It's a frustrating and ultimately unsatisfying experience
So it's a way of learning through feeling.
through energetic feedback.
We realize that those harmful desires just don't lead to happiness.
They lead to suffering.
And this paves the way for the development of more virtuous tendencies in future lives.
Exactly. It's about purification.
And once these lower desires have been purged, the individual progresses to the first heaven.
A realm of pure joy,
And rest.
completely free from earthly suffering.
And in this realm, our thoughts can manifest as tangible experiences.
Beautiful houses, vibrant flowers, all created from the substance of the desire world.
So it's like a world of pure imagination.
In a sense, yes.
What about children who pass away? What happens to them in the first heaven?
Well, for them, it's not just a waiting place.
It's a continuation of their development.
They're cared for, often by relatives or those who love children,
And they receive gentle lessons about good and evil.
to prepare them for future lives.
It is a very nurturing environment.
Very much so. And the first heaven is also a place of advancement for those who were particularly studious, artistic, or altruistic during their lives.
So the things we dedicate ourselves to on Earth,
They continue in the first heaven.
they have a lasting impact.
Absolutely.
Now, it's not all just rest and relaxation in the first heaven.
Right.
There's also work to be done.
Spiritual work.
What kind of work are we talking about?
We're talking about shaping the future of Earth
Okay.
and learning to build our future vehicles.
The dense, vital, and desire bodies and the mind,
Exactly. Because, our ultimate destiny is to become creative intelligences.
capable of working with the very fabric of the cosmos.
And this learning is guided by highly evolved beings
The teachers.
from the higher creative hierarchies.
And it's interesting how they describe this guidance as becoming more conscious in the heaven world.
Right. It was more unconscious in earlier stages.
It's like our bodies being built during sleep.
Exactly.
But as we evolve, we gain more conscious control over the process.
And the book also makes this point that we can never truly inhabit a physical body that's more advanced than our own inner development.
So our spiritual growth dictates the quality of our physical form.
It's like a feedback loop.
Now, eventually, the individual starts thinking about a new birth.
Right.
And the book describes this process as viewing a panorama of the upcoming life's main events.
But we still have some degree of free will over the details.
It's like a train ticket with a set destination and time limit, but we can choose the route.
A good analogy.
And then what happens immediately after birth?
The various vehicles interpenetrate the physical body,
Okay.
but their positive faculties are largely inactive.
They're dormant.
Right. They're gradually awakened by the macrocosmic vital body's ethers.
Until about the age of 7,
And around 14, the mind starts to fully awaken.
nurtured by the macrocosmic mind.
And finally, around 21, the ego can fully possess its vehicles.
And this process is linked to the development of blood circulation and body heat.
It's all very interconnected.
It is. Now, this whole perspective on human development,
Right.
it's a stark contrast to what the book calls the materialistic theory of life and death.
Which they see as incomplete,
It doesn't explain the full richness of human experience.
or the spiritual dimension of life.
And they also raise some interesting criticisms of certain theological doctrines,
Particularly the ones about salvation.
which they see as illogical and unjust,
They even reference Buddha's question,
about why a god would allow so much suffering.
if those doctrines were true.
It's a question that has haunted humanity for ages.
And their answer is that it's not about punishment or reward in the afterlife.
It's about an ongoing process of growth and evolution.
Exactly.
Now, what's their perspective on genius?
They see genius not as a result of heredity or chance, but as the fruit of hard work and dedication in past lives.
So it's like a glimpse into our future potential.
Exactly.
And this leads to the introduction of two fundamental laws,
Rebirth and consequence.
or, as we often call it, karma.
It's the idea that we're constantly learning and growing through a series of lifetimes.
Our actions have consequences.
And those consequences shape our future experiences.
And this process is guiding us towards a higher state of being,
The Superman, as they call it.
the full realization of our potential.
And it's important to note that they clarify that rebirth does not mean regression into animal or plant forms.
Right.
They specifically address that misinterpretation.
Okay, so no going back to being a monkey.
No monkeys.
Okay, good to know. Now, the book then shifts its focus to the physical movements of our planet.
Right.
It talks about the Earth's wobbling motion
The precession of the equinoxes.
and its effect on the pole star and the climate over vast periods.
It's a very slow, gradual process.
But it has a huge impact over time.
And they even tell this story about Mr. L
Okay,
and the astrologer who predicted his unfortunate accident.
illustrating the difficulty of escaping one's destiny.
Even when you have some foreknowledge,
So even if you know what's coming, it's still hard to avoid it.
it suggests a certain degree of predetermination,
Okay.
but it's not absolute.
Mm-hmm.
We still have free will within that framework.
And then they give this broad outline of human development across different epochs.
The great stages of our evolution.
And they link these epochs to the acquisition of different bodies.
The Polarian epoch, where we develop the germ of the dense body.
Okay.
The Hyperborean epoch, focused on the vital body.
The Lemurian epoch, the desire body.
And the Atlantean epoch, the mind.
So we're slowly building up our spiritual vehicles over vast periods.
It's a gradual process.